Welcome, everyone. My name is Brett Woodard. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the director of the EDGE program in the Career Center, and I'm really excited to have you join me, my colleague Jordan Somerville from Alumni Engagement, and 4 alumni from the class of 2008 today to talk about their experiences when they were in your shoes graduating a few years ago and encountering similar challenges. Both they and their friends were going through different challenges, and we'll hear from them in their own career journeys today to shed some light on how they've navigated their careers and managed the bumps and the pivots and the changes that they've encountered through their own personal and professional lives. A few housekeeping notes for attendees. If you'll look in the chat box, you will see that you have an option to enter a message with a drop-down option for sending the message to panelists or to panelists and attendees. The default is to just send that to panelists, but I'd like you to post any comments or questions to both panelists and attendees so that we're able to see those. As we get started with the program, I'm going to facilitate a few initial questions and then open it up to questions that you have that you've submitted in the chat box, and Jordan Somerville will pull from those questions, and we'll go from there. Your video, if you're an attendee, is not active at this point, so don't be concerned about that. We have you muted, but the way for you to share your voice and your questions is through the chat interface today. So without further ado, let's get started on the program today. And I do want to let you know about some other upcoming events that we have. This is one of 6 different alumni panels we've been hosting over block break, or not the block break, but over block 8. Next Monday, we will have another webinar, not an alumni panel, but a webinar with myself and with our director of the Wellness Resource Center at 4 p.m. on Monday the 11th. And that is focused very similarly on moving through obstacles and challenges in your career with both a career perspective and a wellness perspective to that. So we hope that you'll join us for that. You can find a link for that program and other panels and events in Handshake. So please check Handshake for upcoming other webinars and programming. So today we're talking about the hot topic, what so many of you are going through right now, which is unplanned change. And we know that it's a stressful time, that you feel in many ways your worlds have been turned upside down, like so many people, whether they're at a place of being a college student or being a family member or a professional in some other environment. We're all dealing with change in different ways, but we know that this is particularly impactful to you as a college student. Particularly if you're graduating, I know that you feel like you've been robbed of the opportunity to say goodbye to your friends, to walk across a stage right now. We know you have the opportunity in the future, but I know that that's hard. I know that the loss of having a routine right now that you are accustomed to on campus has thrown things out of whack. And so getting back into a place where you feel productive and you feel mentally and emotionally like you're on top of your game and you're able to move forward despite all of the challenges you're encountering and the bad news that's pouring in through the internet and TV every day does not help things. But I want to start by sharing with you an observation that I see increasingly from employers. COVID aside, in many job descriptions today, employers are stating that they're looking for employees who have the ability to manage change and to move through ambiguity and to not let moments where you can't see the future in complete clarity inhibit you from being able to move forward, and to find ways to be productive and to take initiative regardless of how clear or unclear the future may be. So while this is a challenging time, you've all been gifted with the opportunity to make the most of this and to consider how will you speak about this moment in the future when you do have an interview for a job or an internship and an employer asks you, how did you manage this time? So I want to encourage you to think about Your life is a blank page at this point, and you have the opportunity to create your own story about how you use resources and friends and alumni and other strategies to be able to move forward through this challenging time and progress and find your own version of success for yourself with the help of other people. So I'm really excited to introduce to you 4 alumni who have experienced that in their own personal ways, all particularly experiencing that in different ways in light of the great, excuse me, the Great Recession that we experienced in 2008. So I'd like to have every alum take turns introducing themselves and just share a little bit of your background, and then we'll proceed with some initial questions. Dave, can we start with you?
Sure, just coming off mute here. So my name is Dave Bowen. My pronouns are he, him, his. And my more recent professional history is that I actually just moved back to Denver after being in Washington, D.C. for about 6.5 years. And over the last 5 years, I was working at a startup that worked in the commercial drone services industry. So I was heading our product strategy there. And after I moved to Colorado from DC, I made the great choice of deciding to leave my job and start doing independent consulting in December, while also sort of looking at new opportunities. So I had the great fortune of not only graduating into the 2008 financial crisis, but then also looking for a job more recently during the coronavirus pandemic. And fortunately, I did find a position just recently. So I'll be starting a new role on May 18th at Olteg, which is an engineering firm, and I'll be essentially heading up a new group that's sort of focused on technology innovation, how to incorporate new technologies into the service offerings that Olteg has across power, water, and transportation infrastructure engineering. And then looking back at my CC experience, so I was a history major at CC with an art history minor. So, you know, my professional career in kind of emerging and high technology is a little bit perhaps of a departure from, you know, what the typical prescribed course for a history major is. But you know, when I was graduating in 2008, I'm somewhat ashamed to admit as well that I really had no clue what I wanted to do with myself whatsoever. I knew that I wanted some time to think about it, but you know, most of my ideas were just derivative of, you know, what my family had been doing previously. So pretty much everyone in my family is either in law or education, and that was kind of what I was thinking at the time. But you know, I could talk more about my actual journey later after 2008. But the first job that I took out of that was a temporary position working for the Forest Service in Arizona. So I had a circuitous route to where I am today. But I guess I'll stop there just for the sake of time.
Thanks, Dave. Carmen, let's go to you for an introduction.
All right, so my name is Carmen Robinson. I am, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I graduated obviously in 2008 with a degree in French and Francophone studies. And since then have done a variety of things, but I am currently, I've been a nurse since 2012. I'm currently a clinical documentation improvement specialist with the Centura Health System. So I review clinical documentation currently and make sure that it is optimized for revenue cycle services. But prior to that, I was in the emergency department for the past 8 years in Atlanta. I just recently moved back to Denver in September. So did 8 years of emergency nursing in a variety of settings in rural and urban and level 1 trauma centers, and most recently in an academic medical center with Emory University. I've also worked in pediatric hemophilia, where we partnered at Emory with the CDC and their genetics department. And I did a stint in adult congenital cardiology as well. So currently not at the bedside, but able to use all that clinical experience in my current role now. I do have a master's in nursing with an emphasis in health policy. And let's see what else I was supposed to tell you about my introduction. lots of changes that I dealt with in my transition after graduation, and it's taken me a lot of different places, but I was able to adapt to all of that pretty well, I'd say. At the time of graduation, I always kind of knew healthcare was the goal. Panicked around 2008, like everyone else was, I'm sure, and actually applied to the Colorado Springs Police Department. I mean, it was in line with my service-oriented goals, and I guess luckily that didn't work out. But in that panic, just thinking about what job I could get immediately to have a steady source of income was the impetus right then and there. But made it into healthcare and have had a pretty successful career once that happened. So happy to be here today.
Thanks. Ashley, let's jump over to you.
Hi everyone, my name is Ashley, Harp grader. I graduated in CC in 2008 with an English degree. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I always thought that I wanted to be an attorney. I think similar to what Dave said, my parents are educators and lawyers, and the rest of my family. So the whole time I was at CC, my goal was always to go to law school. And I think the 2008 situation kind of cemented that as a solid sounding plan. But I'm happy to tell you that I'm a proud 1L for life. I dropped out of law school after my first year. It was not the plan for me. And I've taken a kind of roundabout route to nonprofit work. So currently I work at the CU Boulder College of Music, and I'm a fundraiser for the college. I really love supporting the arts, and I'm very happy that I'm not an attorney. So I'm happy to chat more about, how grad school fits into these panic moments.
And Aaron, let's jump to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Aaron Gutierrez. I'm a 2008 graduate from CC. My major was International Political Economy with a minor in Spanish. My pronouns are him, his. I would say that my career path is kind of the opposite of Ashley. I wanted to go to law school. I've always kind of known that was my path, but after graduating, I wanted to explore different things to make sure that was really what I wanted to do. So I applied with the Alpamar Foundation and was a fellow there doing nonprofit work, basically doing grants for nonprofits and running their programs there. But because of the economy, they were offering incentives for the fellows to leave. So I ended up doing another fellowship out in Washington, D.C. with the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. And I was there for about a year. And then after that, I came home back to Pueblo, worked for a law firm, and law school was still for me. I went to Western Michigan University in Michigan for law school. I graduated, and I'm currently working as a public defender with the Colorado State Public Defender's Office. And I've been there, it'll be 4 years this December. And that's kind of been my path. It was definitely a struggle during that time, but I just kept, tried to be positive and applying for a lot of different things, and just see what worked out. So that's kind of what I have to offer.
Thanks, Aaron. Attendees, just to remind you, as you hear our panelists speak, think about what follow-up questions you might have, whether that's for a specific panelist or for everyone. And please use the chat box to enter your thoughts or your questions. Please select all panelists and attendees when you pose a question, and we'll pull from some of those in a few moments. Where I want to go for a moment now is some themes that I heard. Even though you've all had very different pathways, it sounds like you all started either knowing exactly what you wanted to do or what you thought you wanted to do, or you had information that was influencing what you thought you wanted to do, whether that was familial influences and what your family and friends have done for career options, or what you thought was the route you were supposed to take based on your chosen discipline, your major or your minor. And I know that at that point, as a young person, it's easy to want to envision your career being this straight line that takes you from point A, from college, to point B, and pursuing your dream, your passion, what you think everything's supposed to look like. But Dave hit on a word that we talk about a lot with career paths, and that's circuitous. And it's not really common for there to be a straight line in our career paths. Can some of you share how you've experienced that and how that became a reality to you when you realized that life is full of a series of choices and challenges and changes as you go through your career?
Yeah, I guess I can maybe add a little more detail to my own job path. I didn't really go into too much about it, but you know, since I graduated in 2008, I've worked like a lot of different jobs. So in 2008, like I said, I worked for the Forest Service. I was studying goshawks, which is a type of sub-canopy forest hawk, for a few months. I had a Rick Kellogg grant, which was awesome. So I did a trip after that for a month with some friends. Then I ended up back in Chicago, where I'm from. And that's when, you know, I think it really hit home that it was a tough job market, especially for someone at the time who really didn't have much sense of direction. So I made the right decision to apply for the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program, or the JET program. Because as I mentioned earlier, I had some interest in education, and also you know, wanted to immerse myself in a new culture and learn a new language. You know, the problem is that that application process is really long, and I didn't find out for months that I was actually accepted into the program. But that's, you know, going into 2009, that really brought some stability, I guess, to my job situation. But in that year previous, I mean, I worked all kinds of weird jobs. I was like heating up cars for snowbirds that had gone down to like Florida for the weekend, or for longer. I mean, I was a ACT tutor for a certain period of time. I did some like work on the side for a Franciscan monk who I met in a coffee shop, and I'm not even Catholic, but I just started doing work for this guy. So, you know, I did what I needed to do to survive at the time. One thing I learned, and I can get into this more later too, but I think I really did not take a strategic approach to exploring different options. I did it kind of in a haphazard way. So I would, you know, recommend having some strategy to your search, but at the same time, I would also say that I'm actually, you know, looking back at it, I sort of look fondly in all those different experiences, because, you know, I think they gave me a sort of different perspective on things, and I learned some skills that I probably wouldn't have otherwise. But after being at the JET program for a few years, I decided to go to grad school, and it ended up in a master's program at Georgetown University, where I got a degree in international affairs. I thought I wanted to join the Foreign Service. I realized like about a year in that that's not what I wanted to do at all, and pivoted towards business. And after doing a few internships in different places, working for the US ASEAN Business Council, I worked for the Foreign Commercial Service, which is a different branch of the Foreign Service in Thailand for a while, and ultimately ended up sort of serendipitously in the commercial drone industry. And now I'm pivoting slightly out of that into a job mostly in you know, kind of traditional engineering. So I think you know, the route that you take is going to be you know, it definitely has the potential to be quite circuitous. I think the core thing for me was developing a set of transferable skills that, you know, I feel confident in you know, my ability to apply to a number of different job paths. And you know, yeah, I mean, I think that's the most I could say about it. I probably have a more circuitous route than most people, but you know, there are sort of lines of stability that you can draw through that. And I think a lot of that is how you build up your own sort of set of skills and your own personal brand.
Thanks, Dave. Carmen?
Yeah, so circuitous, yeah, that's a great word. You had mentioned Brett, how we all kind of went into this with an idea of what we wanted to do, you know, based off of family, friends, whatever our history. I can say for my personal situation, I was a first-gen college student, so I didn't have, you know, family with careers and college degrees and really any guidance from that, you know, personal source that most people have to kind of help guide my trajectory. During my time at CC, I spent a lot of time in the Career Center actually, and recall doing all of their personality tests, and I can't even recall the names of them right now, but that kind of gear you towards what careers you would do well in. And so that's where I really got my focus based on the things that I'd always enjoyed. So I knew I always enjoyed helping people, knew I always wanted to solve problems and make things better. And so healthcare just kind of seemed to fit into that. But after utilizing those resources in the Career Center, helping hone what that looked like and what that could look like, one of the biggest things that really kind of shaped or had a huge impact on the path that I've taken is the fact that I had a kid my sophomore year at CC. And so completely changed a lot of my CC experience, but also changed how I responded at the time of graduation. You know, I could have, like I said, I was interested in healthcare, and thinking about going right into grad school was, you know, yet another time frame where I wouldn't necessarily have a steady income. And then, you know, with that, okay, how do I take care of this kid now that I'm going to lose pretty much all of the support and resources that I had received at Colorado College, hence that panic in applying to the police department. But I have always just had a, like I said, I'm not coming from a general place where I feel like a lot of CC students do come from, with the support and resources and kind of guidance that they have. But because of that, I've always had this like innate sense of I'm going to be successful, I'm going to make it out, having that drive, that determination, that motivation, but then being able to utilize the resources presented to me and around me through CC, the Career Center, mentors, friends that I've developed during college and thereafter, helping, you know, bounce ideas off of and get tips, tricks, tools, resources, get their ideas, surrounding myself with people who I viewed as successful in their own right, whichever way that may be, and people who I looked up to and wanted to emulate, and making sure that I leaned on them heavily as resources so they could help me get to a place where I could feel successful and do what it was that I went to do. So it's really bad to say.
Thanks, Carmen. Ashley or Aaron, did you have thoughts on this question?
Sure. I think the advice I would impart is don't do what I did. Save yourself. You know, after I left law school, I felt very lost. So this was 2009 and the economy really wasn't much better. And I actually came back to the CC Career Center and did all those great things that Carmen was just mentioning that I hadn't done when I was a student because I thought I didn't need to, because I had it all figured out, which was very dumb. You know, through that process, I realized that nonprofit was the path for me, but there was so much economic uncertainty still that, you know, most nonprofits, especially small ones, were not hiring. And I didn't really have the thought process of like, there's got to be some nonprofit who, you know, isn't as impacted by all of this. And I think it really took meeting a CC alum who actually was a fundraiser at CU Boulder to kind of turn me on to that fact. So I had stumbled across her LinkedIn profile and asked her for coffee, and that coffee like totally changed the whole trajectory for me. I had been doing just awful jobs. I worked at a gym, don't recommend that. I worked at a restaurant, I worked at a hotel, I worked briefly for a healthcare software company before I realized I didn't know what anything was in my job. And, you know, meeting that alum who was doing work that I wanted to be doing, and she helped explain to me that, you know, higher ed, I don't know what, it seems like COVID may be different this time around, but higher ed wasn't as impacted as all those small nonprofits, and they were hiring. And Lissy helped me get my first job in higher education, and I'm so thankful to her that she really put me on the path that I continue on today. And since that coffee with her, I feel like my career has been linear, which as like a type A nut job, I really like. But, you know, I did do like 3 solid years of not knowing what I was doing and feeling like pretty stressed, and you know, I felt disappointed in myself. I felt like I had let people down. It was just like awful. So I really empathize with what you all are going through and like how hard this time is. And I would encourage you to be gentle with yourself and to take the time that you need. Molly, I saw your question, and you know, I think grad school is always a great option, especially, you know, during uncertain times. Sometimes getting more training is a really wonderful thing to do. I think from my own experience, many people in my life told me that they did not see me as an attorney, and I was like, you guys just don't think I can do it. I can do it. And that's not why they were saying those things. So, you know, Molly, your dream is to be an English professor. I think my encouragement would be to do more what Erin did and try that career on, and just, you know, if you can, make sure that that's a good fit for you. I, you know, paid off a $30,000 law school loan for fun, I guess. And so if you can avoid that kind of time and money investment if it's not the path for you, I think that's great. But if it is the path for you, you know, I think graduate school can be a really great option in uncertain times.
For the sake of the recording, for students who aren't able to join us live, when they watch the recording, they're not able to see the questions in the chat box. So I'll just read that out loud, that one of our attendees had stated that as a junior majoring in poetry and minoring in French, and the book, who wants to be an English professor, she's scared, and had asked, could you talk more about grad school during a time of panic? So thank you for speaking to that, Ashley. Do any of our other panelists have thoughts about making choices between grad school and continued studies versus pursuing work, and how one might make the best decision for themselves, particularly in a time of panic and challenge like we have today?
I can jump in there. I knew that in order to get to where I wanted to be in healthcare, I was going to have to go back to school eventually. And the longer I put it off, the longer it was going to take me to get to that place. So that being said, it was to my benefit to go ahead and go to grad school. But, you know, I still had to work. I still had to provide for myself and a child at that time. So I had to figure out what grad school setting was going to be ideal for me and how I was going to make that work financially. I had to think about location, you know, whether I was going to stay somewhere closer to home where I might have more support, if I was going to go far away. I had to think about what kind of load I was going to take on. They had programs I was looking at, a direct entry, like master's program. Was I just going to jump right in on a fast pace, into a fast-paced program to get that training soon and, you know, suffer maybe financially on that one end? Or was I going to take it, you know, the normal traditional take a more traditional route and be able to probably work some more during that time? I don't think I made the best choice for my situation, but I packed up and I moved to Montreal. I got accepted to McGill, and ever since I was young, I had been saying I was moving to Montreal and going to McGill for no reason at all. No one in my family speaks French. No one in my family has a passport or has been out of the country. But that was a goal I had set for myself, and I went and I did it. And with a 3-year-old as an international student, it was not an ideal situation. And so, like Ashley was saying, I really had to take a step back and deal with some hurt pride in my sense, and, you know, think about how I was going to come back from that, and how I could come back home and face my family and friends or whoever else who was so excited to see me off on this journey, you know, this goal that I had set for myself. And so had to transferred into a nursing program in Kansas after that, and did wonderfully there. Was, you know, 4.0 honor roll did just fine, was still able to work and do everything that I had set out to do, just in a different setting. So definitely staying open-minded, being gentle with yourself. I think Ashley said it great. And knowing that I didn't fail, I had a different path, and finding my own definition and idea of success within that, and being okay with that, and still being able to accomplish my goals. So, so you have to figure out what works best for you, and know that it's not necessarily going to be what works best for someone else, and make peace with that.
I love these themes of going easy on yourself and being gentle on yourself, even when you feel disappointed with yourself. And when you're disappointed with external circumstances, figuring out a way to move forward with what's best for you. But if you think back to the moments when you were frustrated or disappointed, or you felt doubtful about your ability to be able to move forward, what have you learned since those times that would be helpful advice? If you could go back and speak to your younger self, how would you advise coping with those moments? Or how would you advise figuring out what is the right direction for yourself?
I can talk about that a little bit. I mean, when I was really excited to start at Alpamar Foundation as a fellow, and when the economy went down, the program completely changed of what I thought it was going to be, and so I was definitely a real bummer for me, and but at the same time, it was also an opportunity, and so I would say, I mean, don't get too down on yourself, because I hate to use the cliche, but when one door closes, another door opens. Because when I applied for that other position, I had the opportunity to work in Washington, D.C., in the White House. And so I would say just to keep trying and keep your head up and stay as positive as possible, because, it worked out in the best for me. And I would just say, keep trying.
Yeah, I can add on to that, just sort of, I guess, expand on what I was saying earlier, and what some other people have said here. Knowing what your strengths are, I think, is a really good place to start. And there are lots of different methods for doing that the Career Center can help you out with, like, Myers-Briggs personality test, that type of thing. But, I also have a personal thesis or hypothesis that most people, certainly at the tender age of 22 or thereabouts, don't really know what they want to do with their lives, even if they think they do, because you haven't done it yet. And that's the thing, is like, I think a lot of people who have a idea of what they want to do that's really clear, as you've heard from some of our panelists, will find out that maybe that's not right for them. And other people like me who don't have any idea, will also have to test stuff out and see what makes sense. So I think, thinking about your career as maybe like a series of hypothesis tests or experiments in different different areas of work is a good way to approach it. It's almost like a continuation of the learning that you're doing in college, right? You're finding out more about yourself, you're finding out more about the world. And I think a useful tool that I've found, I'm going to plug a book that I've no financial connection to this whatsoever, but this book's called Designing Your Life, and it's about design thinking. And I think it's a really interesting approach to thinking about trying out new careers, thinking about creating different visions of what your next career move could be, and then finding ways to actually test those out in a way that doesn't overcommit you. Because I'll also say that I went and got a master's degree and then also pivoted a little bit, and I was fortunate enough to have concentrated in business and finance within that, so it was a more seamless transition. But I don't think it was a particularly smart move to take on a bunch of debt just to try something out. So I think there's methods that you can employ, like design thinking, that will help with this process. But ultimately, I think what's important ultimately is understanding what your strengths are, understanding what your skill set is a little more specifically, which is something you can build on throughout your career, and then figuring out, what interests you and applying it in specific ways. But, there's about a trillion different possibilities over the course of your life. It's about, the road not taken, I guess, right? So I guess that would be my advice.
It's probably also cliche, but all of your hardest days, the hardest things that you've ever done up to this point in your life, you've obviously made it through. So don't look at anything in the future as something that you can't possibly do. I mean, just take your previous experience as proof of that. And I think it may be a little different and easier in healthcare, but as a nurse, nursing is nursing is nursing. It doesn't matter if there's obviously intricacies depending on different specialties, but it's why I was able to transition into pediatrics versus adults versus big hospitals versus small hospitals versus cardiology versus hemophilia versus emergency departments. So echoing what Dave said, making sure that you have a skill set. I mean, how you figure out what that skill set is a little different, but definitely honing that skill set just opens the doors to a number of possibilities. So.
I think if there's a way that you can, know yourself and know what's going to make you feel the least stressed during this really stressful time. I think that I probably didn't do a very good job of having an organized, directed job search in 2009 when I left law school, but my husband and I lived in New York City for a few years, and when I searched for a job there, I did it the way I wish I would have done it in 2009, and I found the kind of the publication for my industry, and they published some lists of the top places to work, and I turned that into a spreadsheet, and I bookmarked all their job sites, and I just had a very systematic, and that's not for everyone, but for me, I think I think when I'm applying to jobs, I tend to get over invested in writing the perfect cover letter, or spending too many hours researching the company and not enough time getting out lots of applications. And then because I was investing so much time into each effort, if I didn't hear back, or if I ultimately didn't receive the position, it just feel like this crushing thing that would take me a week to get over before I could get back on the horse and keep going at it. And so, I think if you can find a way to kind of protect your emotions during this time, if that's possible, to, just kind of keep chugging and keep churning out applications for things that interest you. And I would encourage you to only apply for things that interest you, because I think there's a lot out there even during this time, and to just try to be really disciplined about, all right, set a goal for yourself, whether you want to do a certain number of applications a week, or, just to kind of keep yourself on track. And then I would say celebrate submitting those as the success. You can't always, especially during this time, it feels like we can't control anything in our lives. So I would say focus on the things that you can control and congratulate yourself and celebrate, when you meet those goals that you do have control over.
Ashley, you hit on a few things there. Not only taking care of your emotions, but finding ways to stay on track and hold yourself accountable. Now, something that's different about the COVID situation is, of course, that we're all still isolated. And so we know right now our students feel very much alone. And I'm wondering for all of you, how much have you navigated your careers, dealt with disappointment, and made decisions for yourself in isolation, or what types of human beings have you drawn upon as resources for encouragement, for accountability in moving forward, reaching out to find folks who would help keep you on track in staying the course? Can you speak to how other humans in your lives have played a role in supporting you?
I feel like, so what was it, January this year, I participated in the Empowering Students of Color Summit at CC, which I just found to be a wonderful opportunity that I just learned about that they were doing. And the theme this year was, you can't be what you can't see. And when I heard about that, it spoke to me so strongly, as, you know, a young, disadvantaged, you know, Black girl who was not supposed to make it out of, you know, the east side of Denver. And so as my way of giving back, I participated as a panelist in one of their nursing workshops. But I think that it's so true. And you have to surround yourself by people who you respect, who you value, who you trust, who have interests that you think that you might be interested in as well, who can help you get there, who have resources. I mean, that doesn't mean that you can't have friends and families who aren't doing, you know, what some might feel to be great things. People are great in their own right, and success is success is defined differently for everyone. And so just making sure you're surrounding yourself with those people who you value and think and see as successful human beings, who you know that are going to support you on your journey, whether you're doing well, quote unquote, or whether you're struggling. You need those people who are going to support you in any circumstance, and reaching out to develop those networks if you don't have them. Like Ashley mentioned, reaching out to a CC alum, any job that you've previously had, reaching out to someone in that company. And another thing to keep in mind with that, I'm frozen, I hope you can still hear me.
We can hear you.
Okay, good. Another thing to keep in mind with reaching out is, it doesn't always have to be a supervisor or someone on the leadership team to give you guidance. Because I know in my personal.
And there, I think we did freeze up and lost Carmen for just a moment there. While we're waiting for Carmen to come back, did anyone else have a comment that they wanted to share? Dave?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you know, like I said, looking at the difference between my job search in 2008 versus 2020. In 2008, I didn't rely on anybody because I sort of felt that I could figure everything out on my own, and was pretty stubborn about that, and that was a terrible move. I mean, like I said, I got kind of lucky with getting into the JET program, and that sort of set me on a stable path. But before that, I was kind of all over the place with my job searching. This time around, I made use of mentors that I had built up in my professional career already, which I would certainly recommend. I tapped back into so I definitely recommend making use of the Career Center resources that you have at your disposal. In my case, I was actually going back to my grad school Career Center just because it's a little closer in time to now. But CC has got plenty of great resources. So having someone who a coach or a counselor who's invested in your success is really helpful. But ultimately, I mean, when you're approaching a job search too, I can't emphasize enough the importance of actually going out and talking to people and networking with people. I mean, hands down, that's the best way to get a job. And I know it's like, it's almost trite to say that, and it's kind of a cliche that networking is the way to do it. And maybe you've heard this already, but I mean, I think the way that networking was explained to me many a time, through my education and throughout my career, at least initially, I had this impression that was like, okay, you go to like a cocktail party, or you go to like one of these career fairs, and you have to like make this really like dynamic impression on someone right there, and like give them your card and then follow up. It's like, and that is not the way that I've done it at all, because I think it's a terrible way to network. In my case, it's been just reaching out to people and asking them for advice. And actually, I think this plays into kind of what I was saying before, which is you're trying to figure out what works for you, what you're interested in, and if you approach networking as a way, as a path of discovery for yourself, not only I think will that be more useful to you in a career pathfinding kind of perspective, but it'll also make your informational interviews with people that much easier to obtain, and also pretty seamless. And I mean, I've been doing this the last few months too, just reaching out to people, sometimes like very vague connections, and as long as you take, if you approach them and say like, hey, I'm so and so, we have this vague connection. Here's how, what I'll line out for you. And I'm seeking your advice on this. Like, my hit rate has been like, 75%, which is pretty good. And that's, how, it's actually not how I got this job, but that's the exception that proves the rule, because across the board, I got another position previously that got frozen because of the coronavirus pandemic, and that was purely through networking. But I fundamentally believe that's the best way to do it. I've actually got one more book I'm going to pitch too. This is called The 2-Hour Job Search by Steve Dalton, who works in the Fuqua School of Business. It's UNC. I think, or is it Duke? It's Duke. But anyway, this guy's great, and he lays out like a really, very clear kind of step-by-step process for networking your way into a job, which I found super useful, and I think it's really clear, kind of down-to-earth advice. So I would recommend that.
Carmen, we're so glad you were able to rejoin us. This is the joy of technology and things.
I am so
freezing
sorry
up.
about that.
Mine happens to freeze up quite a lot. I feel pretty lucky today, actually. So thank you. I want to go to a question that was posed a while ago, because we're already running toward our hour time. And so Melissa with us had said that, hi, I'm a first-generation student too, and I still don't know what I want to do for a career, but I don't know how to talk to my family about my interests and my desire to explore. What is your advice for finding your place? And what is your advice about sharing it with others?
I guess as the first gen student, I'll speak up, or first gen alum. My relationship with my family was not ideal. I was kind of out on my own. And so their input and opinion was very superficial, I will put it that way. But like I was speaking about before I cut out, I was able to utilize the people, the relationships that I had developed, the people who were close to me that I did trust and value and look up to, and bounce those ideas off of them. Having developed that trust and those relationships with them, I knew that I could be open with them about my fears and my vulnerabilities, and that they would be receptive to that and not make me feel bad about that, and encourage me to do whatever it was that I wanted to do. And that being said, you should do what you want to do. I mean, there are ways to do that successfully that have been mentioned here, but do what you're passionate about. And it doesn't have to be, in line with anyone else's goals other than your own. And that's ultimately what's going to make you happy in the long run. So I'll leave that there and let someone else jump in.
Other thoughts from panelists at this moment?
I would say trying to figure out what you want to do. Try job shadowing different careers that you're interested in to see if any of that kind of perks your interest. I would say even interning for free somewhere to get some perspective in an area that you're interested in. That's a great way. I did that in college quite a bit. I'm trying to think what else. I think those are kind of the big things into as far as exploring what you want to do as far as a career path.
Mm-hmm.
Just quickly, like I was saying before, I mean, I think informational interviews were also a good way to do that. You can ask people, specifically what their, sort of day-to-day job responsibilities are like, what skills they need to develop to get into that role. I think you can actually learn a lot about potential career paths just by chatting with people.
And I'll add to that as well, for all our attendees, make sure to make Google your friend as a starting point, because there's an overwhelming amount of information, and that's good and bad. It's great because there's a lot of information that you can find on virtually any occupation and career path. The challenging side is that you can get lost in that information. And so I think balancing doing some self-guided research to see what am I finding to be information on the internet about a particular role or organization or occupation or career, and then how do I go and take some of that information and confirm it by reaching out to alumni and other people to say, now what's the reality with your experience? How does this line up with how you've really lived it yourself? Does that make sense, panelists? And are there other questions that students or others who have sought you out in networking have asked you that you thought was a really great question, a really good starting point for how to network with you or build a relationship?
I think just being really genuine, I think, is always the most important thing about those interactions. You know, I don't think, you know, when I've done informational interviews as the person seeking information or as the person answering questions, I think as long as people are being genuine, they tend to go really well, I think. You know, I wouldn't expect someone asking me for information or help to, you know everything about me or my industry or what the next steps could be. So I don't think that you need to worry that, you know, well, if I don't super impress them with all the research I've done ahead of time, you know, I wouldn't let that stop you. I think being your genuine self and asking, you know, questions that really do interest you should set you up for success.
That's just one thing. Having a LinkedIn profile is pretty much a prerequisite, I think. So if you don't have one set up, I would do that. And honestly, that's how I've reached out to most people to network with them as well. Sometimes you'll find people's like email or phone information on the internet, but a lot of times people bury it. But if you have LinkedIn, you can reach out to pretty much anyone. Yeah, and you don't need LinkedIn Premium or whatever. You know, you can just send someone a friend request and attach a note to that. But if you don't have a LinkedIn account, I would very, very highly recommend that you set one up. It takes like 3 seconds.
And for our panelists, a question just came in from Zoe asking, do you use TigerLink? And for everyone, TigerLink is our smaller version of LinkedIn that is specific to a subset of the CC community that any alum or family member can join to be a resource. And we do recommend students use that in addition to using LinkedIn to reach a wider audience. Alumni, are you on TigerLink right now, and have you been contacted by students that way?
I'm not on TigerLink, no. I think this is the first time I've heard of it, so I don't think we had it back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys have way more cool technology than we did. In 2008, I remember chastising my friends for texting me because I didn't want to get charged 10 cents a text. So that will give you some context on how old we are. But I am on TigerLink, and feel free to contact me.
I'm not on TigerLink yet, but I will be signing up. I do have LinkedIn though.
And attendees, we will be able to distribute to you a little handout with a bio on all of our panelists today and a means for contacting them with follow-up questions afterward, just to address that question as well. We're nearing the end of our hour. I wanted to give students a chance to pose other questions that they might have. While you're thinking about a question you have, I'm going to post a link. So if you'll grab that right now, that URL will take you to a really short survey where we'd love your feedback after the webinar. Feedback on how this went, what other questions you have, suggested other topics that we might plan to host a webinar in the coming weeks, even over the summer. So please grab that and fill that out. And then we will follow up with you with our panelists' bios and contact information. Other questions from students? While we wait for that, panelists, if you think about one piece of advice that you would give students who are dealing with all of the anxiety of launching a job search or an internship search right now and feeling like they're a little stuck, what's some closing advice you might share?
I guess I can go. This is like a one piece of advice and 4 acts, I suppose. So first, don't panic. The economy will rebound at some point. I don't know when, but even so, there's still plenty of companies that are hiring, and just because the economy is taking a downturn and theoretically there's more competition for available spots doesn't mean that you have no chance of getting a job because other people are in the running who may have more experience. Each situation is unique, and I think again, networking is a good way to give yourself a leg up over the competition rather than just cold applying to jobs. Not to say that that's a bad idea in principle, but so that's the first piece of advice. The second piece, which I think we've touched on a lot already here, is take the time to actually reflect upon yourself, understand what your strengths are and what your skills are, particularly those sort of core transferable skills, which I think are what you've probably built up more than you probably know right now over the last 4 years. And then there's also plenty of ways to develop the more specific skills, like Microsoft Office or whatever, that may be more applicable to a given job. I can't recommend those skills specifically because it's so context specific. But anyway, if you have an idea for what you want to target, that's the way to approach that. Third would be strategic in your job search. Don't just haphazardly apply to stuff or take this really kind of shotgun approach to it. I would say take a few different sort of positions or roles that you're interested in or industries, and then start looking at those in a targeted way. Like I think Ashley's example of creating a spreadsheet with different companies is a good way to do it. This book that I was recommending before, to our job search, offers a really good systematic strategy for job searching, which I think will help to keep you sane and also give you something like a regular kind of schedule to stick to. And then fourth is sort of related to this all, but I can't emphasize enough the importance of talking to people and networking and just getting yourself out there, finding more about different roles, and then also expressing your interest and sort of getting your name out amongst potential employers or potential mentors as you continue down your career path.
I
Thanks,
can't
Dave.
echo Dave's number 4 enough. Don't be afraid to put yourself out there. You have to. Talk to people, email people, text people, call people at CC, people at home, people in the community. You have to get out there and you have to be comfortable with that. You are smart enough, you are talented enough, you're obviously about to graduate from Colorado College, and the transferability of a CC degree, I can't emphasize enough. I mean, how did I go from, a French degree to a master's degree in nursing? Like with the education that you're receiving from CC right now, the skills you've learned from the way the block plan works, your time management, your critical thinking skills, everything that you've learned during this last 4 years or however many years, if you're not a senior, is going to be an asset wherever you go, wherever you take it. So don't diminish that at all, and don't hesitate to put yourself out there and sell it. People might be like, why are you coming to me? You don't have this degree, but you have the skills and the capability to sell that and make it work.
Yeah, I would say networking is huge. I think that's the biggest piece. How's the saying go? It's about who you know, not necessarily what you know. Talk to as many people. I know alumni helped me a lot when I was in DC. If I was planning to stay there, they were connecting me with people. So, I mean, we're definitely here to help you. I would also say, don't be afraid to brag about yourself. I know when I was just graduating, I was really humble and was afraid to, brag about yourself, but this is not the time to be humble. I mean, be humble, but don't be afraid to be confident in your skills and the accomplishments that you have. And so those would be my kind of 2 pieces of advice.
I think others have touched on a lot of the things I would have said. So I will just say, remember to practice good self-care. I ran cross country and track at CC, and I think when I was in the height of all of my job angst, I stopped running, which was the worst thing that I could have done, because, you know, that was the thing that helped keep me calm and sane. And so that's been a good lesson for me moving forward in my life. I think whenever I'm, you know, feeling maxed out and stressed, I stop doing the thing that is going to make me feel better. And that's a tendency I have to fight. I didn't run this morning, so I don't know. I'll have to get out there after this, I guess.
Attendees, while we're all distanced from each other, please remember when it comes to self-care, our Wellness Resource Center is still available. They're running different programs. We'll address self-care in a webinar on Monday at 4 o'clock. So please check out their website and look for ways to connect. Please visit the Career Center website and look at our new lineup of virtual services and programs, and a web page that addresses a lot of frequently asked questions about managing your career during this COVID epidemic. And we have a lot of new resources and suggested strategies for you to employ to make the most use of this time. So alumni, we thank you so much. I'm sure that if everything could be audible, you'd hear a lot of applause and cheers from the students. Thank you for sharing your encouragement and your own personal experience with us today. It's always comforting to know that we're not the only one that's struggling and dealing with doubt and challenge, and to see where you've gone in your careers very circuitously is very encouraging for the rest of us. I know that. So we're going to end the webinar now, and I thank you all for joining us. Students and alumni, thank you for making yourselves available for us today. Again, please copy the link in the chat box if you can, to give us some feedback on the webinar, and we will forward bios and contact information for our panelists today. Thank you all for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.